again. He looked to his left, to his right, beyond his feet, but this time he looked backwards, slowly looking back up at the trees behind him, and then he followed the trees down to their trunks, and the trunks down to the ground, where 8 feet behind him was a bear. Now Jeff has been laying on his back at this point, looking over his shoulder. The bear's laying on his belly. His first thought was to roll over, so he wasn't quite as vulnerable. He did that, and he looked at the bear, and he noticed the bear didn't quite look him in the eye. And then he remembered the cookies, still in his hand. He looked at the bear, and the bear looked at the cookies. Now, Jeff's first thought would be the same as anybody's, I think. That was obviously, give the bear the cookies. But then he thought better. Jeff is a bit of a naturalist. He knows the woods. He knows how to handle these situations. And he knew that to give the cookies to the bear would be to establish himself as a food source. He could not give the cookies to the bear. So, well, fortunately, there's something else my brother is good at. He's a bit of a diplomat. Some say he's a better storyteller than I am. So he decided the best thing to do would be to open up a dialogue with the bear. He channeled Fred Rogers. Maybe Mr. Rogers, those of you who aren't on a first-name basis. And he looked that bear right in the eye and he said, "Now, Mr. Bear, I'm not giving you my cookies." And the bear cocked its head and furrowed its brows as if trying to understand what he was saying. So he said it again a little bit louder. "Cookies are for people. Now you just run along and find yourself some bear food." The bear cocked its head the other way, continuing to furrow its brow, continuing to look at the cookies, continuing to sniff, showing its interest. Realizing that the dialogue wasn't working, Jeff thought maybe out of sight, out of mind. So he took the bag of cookies and he stuffed them in his pocket. And the bear stared at his pocket, which did not make him feel any better. And at that point, the bear suddenly sat up on its haunches. So Jeff thought he would do the same. Maybe the bear was really coming to the table now to have a conversation. So Jeff sat up on his haunches. And if you've been walking through the woods and seen them sitting there, you might have thought it looked like a life-size teddy bear picnic. A man, his bear, and their cookies. But the bear continued to look at Jeff's pocket, and it made him more and more nervous. And finally, Mr. Rogers was out the window, and he looked at the bear and he said, "You can't have the cookies! Now get! Go on!" And that seemed to offend the bear. And it stood up. Never taking its eyes off Jeff's pocket, it slowly made a gentle arc around Jeff, looking back over its shoulder. As it walked away, Jeff followed the bear with its eyes, saying, "Good bear, good bear." And eventually it disappeared into the woods back behind him. Jeff pulled the cookies back out of his pocket, put them in his pack, put it on, and went in the opposite direction. So here we are, sitting in the woods under the tarp, and we had just shared these two stories, and we were amazed at how similar our stories were in so many ways. 2 brothers, 2 bears, 2 bags of cookies, 2,000 miles apart, the same month. And as far as we were concerned, for the sake of the story, it must have been the same day too. And as we were remarking about all of this, we realized that the rain had stopped. It was beginning to clear up, and we decided to go fishing. That's why we were there. So we got our waders on, we got our fly rods. I went downstream, Jeff went up. I went to a hole that I'd been looking forward to fishing the whole time we were out there. As I waded out into that water, it was like looking at a Great Smoky Mountains postcard. You know, the clouds were parting, a shaft of light was coming through the autumn leaves that were falling. It was perfect. And I stripped some line off my rod and began placing my first cast. And as that fly landed on the stream and came floating back towards me, and as I mended that line and watched the water, I was thinking about those 2 stories, those 2 bears. And suddenly, for the first time in years, I was reminded of a 3rd bear. That bear from my childhood, the one that I didn't see, the one down at Camp Jordan. And I remembered all the conversations that all the grown-ups had had back then, the conversations about where that bear had come from and where it might be going. I remembered how they said if it had continued that it would have crossed the Chattanooga city limit and wandered deep into the heart of the land of people. Why did they wonder? And I realized at that moment that while I couldn't explain where it come from, I couldn't explain much, I knew exactly where it was going. It was clear that that bear, all those years ago, had been on its way to Missionary Ridge, to Grandma's house, for some of her cookies. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks. Y'all have been such a wonderful audience. It's so great to see all y'all out here tonight. I hope that you get out and enjoy more RiverRocks. I also hope that you'll come to the Wild and Scenic Environmental Film Festival tomorrow night. It is going to be a great, great, great show. They always line up the best movies for it. One last personal note. If you enjoyed that story, I do have some CDs for sale over here. One of them has that story on it. No, it doesn't have that story on it. It has a different story because it always comes out a little bit different every time. But if you're interested in the CDs, come see me over there. They're $15 each, or if you want both my CDs, I sell them as a package for $25. Thank you so much again. Y'all are a wonderful, wonderful audience. Good night.
Thank you all for coming out this evening. That wraps up the evening with 20 Minutes a Million Miles Away. Feel free to check out the materials up here on your way out. And have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the rest of RiverRocks.